זה שיר פשוט, זה שיר קצר, אולי נשמע טיפה מוזר, אבל תדע, כי זו עובדה, שאלוהים אוהב אותך, והוא רואה, והוא שומע.
You caught me. That just doesn't ever get old. I want to, again, always be grateful and thankful to Bat Rivka Witten. Thank you for that song, my friend. What an amazing, amazing worshiper. So if you have not yet went out and found her, I want to encourage you to go and get on YouTube, Bat Rivka Witten. Find her. You're going to love her song. Hineni is, I think, one of my favorite songs that she sings, but there are so many. Heal Our Land. There's so many that we use. And she's given us permission to use those in the Ruta Cafe and on here. So thank you, Bat Rivka. Love you, love you. This week, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm back. What a great time I had in Ohio with all of the women at Beth Tikkun. It was beautiful in the Akron area. Thank you for your hospitality. Thank you for the amazing experiences that I had with you. And I got to meet some of the ladies on the Ruta Cafe team that I haven't been able to touch in person. So it was so great to see all of you. This week, we're hopping right in to Beshalach. Beshalach. Can you say it? Beshalach. It's one of the easier ones, right? Beshalach. We're in Exodus 13:17. We're going to go all the way to 17:16. Let's see how far we get today. The Haftarah we're going to be doing is Judges 4:4 to 5:31, and then the gospel, the portion that I go through, it's Matthew 14:22 to 23. So I really love, again, I'll do a plug here. I love having someone read the Parsha to me and I'm following along. I love to listen. I like to be a hearer of the word. So I love to let it kind of wash over me and have someone reading it. It's really fun if you go on and let it be read over you in Hebrew. That's really beautiful, just to sit and sometimes going to sleep at night and just let the Parsha just be read to you in Hebrew, just kind of just wash over you. If you go to therootedcafe.com, if you go up to the portion, scroll down, there's a section you can click on there and you can listen. One of our ladies, every week it's someone new and they'll be reading the Parsha to you. So that's kind of fun as well. I love doing that. So here we go. We start out right off the bat in 17:1, and it says, it came to be when Pharaoh had let the people go that Elohim did not lead them by the way of the land of the Philistines, though that was nearer. And I kind of stopped there for a little while. I'm going to be honest, this Parsha kind of kicked my honey a little bit today. And this, as I've been studying it, it's a little different this year. I saw some new things in here for me personally, and I pray, Father, I pray that what you have washed over my spirit, what you've spoken to my heart, I know that it was for me, for things to change in me, that I'm closer to you. I'm able to approach you quicker and not let things in my life keep me from running into your presence. I know you never leave me, but sometimes I leave you. So I thank you, Father, right now. And I ask for a blessing over everyone listening right now, whether live or whether listening later, that their hearts would be opened. And Father, that anything that is hardening or strengthening our hearts right now, I thank you that you are softening our hearts and you're taking our heart of stone, you're turning it to a heart of flesh, and you're causing us to obey your commandments. You know, when I pray that, it reminds me there's been a lot of times and that in seasons that I would pray that over my husband. Father, that you would take his heart of stone, turn into a heart of flesh. And when I would get close to the end, I would hear the Holy One say, well, what about your heart? Oh, take my heart of stone and turn it into a heart of flesh and cause me to obey your commandments. And can I just challenge us today that be our prayer today, that we go to Ezekiel and that we pray that prayer over ourselves, that he is causing us to obey his commandments. And we're going to see why here in a little bit. But we can see right here, right off the bat, he's saying that he did not lead them by the way of the Philistines, even though it was closer. It was a closer way to get them to where they needed to go, but he didn't choose to take them that way. And I was thinking to myself, he did not lead me by the way of, well, there's a lot of quicker ways. He did not lead me by the way of maybe the direct route moving straight to Arkansas. I originated in California. Well, I was born in Greenville, South Carolina, but hey, he didn't lead me straight from Greenville, South Carolina to Arkansas. He took me by way of California, then to Colorado, then into Arkansas, and then y'all know for a couple years we stayed in our RV. We actually traveled full time for 2.5 years. Sometime most of the time in Montana. He did not lead me straight to where I'm at today. He didn't, even though he could have. He could have brought me from my birthplace straight to here, direct line. It would have been closer, but he didn't choose to do that. He did not choose to bring me straight to where I'm at right now with the Rooted Cafe and operating and directing that. He did not lead me straight to writing the book that he gave me 25 years ago. He didn't let me do it then. That would have been a closer time. He didn't lead me that way. Instead, he took me by way of a few places. Can you relate? Has he taken you through a few places and he didn't take you directly to where you are today? He didn't bring you directly there. Um, I think the reason is sometimes if I had gone, if I had been straight here, it would have been really, really too easy for me to turn around and go back. Um, it says, why did he do it? Lest they see fighting and return. Lest they see some things that are hard and they turn and go back. I know for me personally, there's some things that I've left in my life that had I been able to go back, I would have, because I saw fighting. It looks a little hard. The bridge is out. I don't feel like crossing the bridge. I don't feel like trying to swim through some waters. It looks hard. I'm going to turn back. So if it's too easy to go back to what's left, he has to get it hard. We have to make it hard to go back, right? Sometimes when it starts getting hard, we're thinking, it wasn't that bad. You know, we minimize things. There's one that's an issue. I'll be fully vulnerable in my right now. That's the thing that I'm really bad at. So y'all pray for me. So I had an experience, and this was shared with me actually by my daughter. She said there's an experience a lot of times that you can have as a child that will actually mark something in you, that it'll filter things that you do the rest of your life. You'll kind of filter your experiences through that. And so for me, instantly, the experience popped up in my mind, and she goes, "Oh, you thought of it, huh?" And I said, "Yeah." And it's an experience I'm not going to share today, but it's an experience that was yucky. It was something that happened when I was a child, and when I told my parents about what happened, I got in a lot of trouble, extreme amount of trouble, because and they told me I was lying. I was not lying. It did happen to me. This event happened to me, but they couldn't. I'll say my mother could not handle what I was saying, and so I got an extreme beating from it. So what that taught me is to minimize anything in my life that happened that was really bad. If it was really bad, I'm just going to minimize it. It wasn't that bad. But what I do also is I also minimize the things that are really good. So everything that kind of I do, I realize I put it through a filter. I'll be like, oh, I graduate with a master's degree. Oh, it wasn't that hard. It was da da da. Instead of just like, wow, thank you. Thanks. My family were proud of me. Thank you. Or there's some things that have happened in my life that have been really hard. And I know I had the opportunity staying with Loyola. We shared some of our stories, and she says, wow, you've gone through some really hard things. And instantly, it wasn't that bad. It wasn't that good. That's what we do is we can filter things through, we can look back and we can filter through an experience, and maybe yours isn't minimizing things. I know my daughter shared her experience with me, and it was about, she remembers a time when she was little, and we had to like take puppies away, and we took them, I don't know, to the pound. To be honest, I don't remember where we took them. They were little. There was too many of them. They were like a bunch of Australian shepherds, and she was crying. I was crying, her dad was crying, everybody's crying, we're taking these dogs away. And she said that she remember what happens is she feels like she kind of filters things now through the fact that things could be taken away. Things are temporary. So when something happens, don't get too attached because it'll be taken away. And she has to realize that that's not truth, right? I realize it's not truth for me to minimize things. So what is it that maybe if you look back If you look back, is it tempting for you to filter what you're doing as if maybe you're a person who like me, you minimize things because of an event that happened in your life that someone told you it wasn't that bad or to stop talking or whatever. Be seen and not heard. I'm interested. I'd be here interested to get feedback from you if you can think of right now that event, what it was, and what do you feel like it's done now to in as you're older, how are you filtering your life events through that? And it's causing you to actually make decisions that aren't through a correct filter. And I know that he's here to heal you from that, and we're going to get to that. So stay tuned. But we don't want to minimize things. We don't want to, we don't, for me, it wasn't about humility. It wasn't about a false humility, or there really is a difference between being humble and minimizing. It's different. And one of the things that I heard this weekend, I had the pleasure of spending some time with Robin Luton, and she shared a statement, and she said, "Feeling worthless is not humility; it's ingratitude." What? I mean that feeling worthless is not humility; it's ingratitude. And it's easy for us as we start talking about these children of Israel, and every time they come back and they're groaning and they're mumbling and they're complaining, that we're thinking, I can't believe they're so ungrateful. I can't believe God's doing all this thing. But when we feel worthless, when we are walking in that, it is not humility. It's actually ingratitude. And he convicts me every time that I go through this parsha because and through the rest of Exodus, it'll rise up in me. I need some yes, me. I mean, put some likes, hearts. I need to see how many of you do the same thing that you read this and you're like, oh my gosh, don't they remember what he got them through? I mean, how are they doing this? He convicts me that fast and reminds me that I do the very same thing almost every single day about something. About something. Can you think of a time that he took you through the long way so that you wouldn't have been tempted to turn back because you're way too close to the old way? Maybe maybe too close to an old person. So he took you a long way. He took you the long way away from them. He so that because if you saw things were hard, you might run back to that person who he was trying to distance you from. Maybe it's an old job, maybe it's a congregation or a ministry. I mean, there have been some things in my life he's taken me the long way around for people that were mentors and teachers, and he caused me to have to go the long way away from them so I didn't run back when things got hard when he was trying to show me things because I was too attached. Can anybody else relate to that? I got too attached to something and it started to become an idol to me. It started to become kind of a god to me, the person maybe. I became too caring too much that mentor or that teacher was that they were let me see, what do I want to say? That they were endorsing me, that they were saying what I was learning was good, that I'm okay. I was wanting that more than I was wanting what he was trying to lead me to. So he took it away and he took me the long way around so that I wouldn't be tempted to run back when it got. Can anyone relate? Does someone have something that I would wish you were here with me. I wish you were sitting here in my office or in my living room and we could all talk about this because I know that there's times this has happened. And he's burned bridges a lot of times for you so you wouldn't go back. Or maybe he took you through a place and then closed the door, like we're going to see he did with the children of Israel. See, one of the steps of transformational change as a leader, going through learning how to help people walk through transformational change, one of the things we're taught to do is you have to burn the boats. Because if you don't burn the boats and you're trying to move a group of people to a direction that you say the Father is trying to lead you to, you're trying to move a group of people in your business or anything, you're moving them to a direction. We're told that if you're trying to move a new way, even if it's a new software, you're trying to put a new software in your company, as a leader, we're told to burn the boat, burn the old one. You have to burn the old one so that people aren't tempted to go back and use that. They're not tempted to go back and do it the old way. You have to get rid of the old ways so that the only way there is only way to go is forward. And I thought it's interesting as I was learning that in some of my courses that I'm taking about transformational change and leading organizations through change. It's interesting to me that I'm like, this is exactly what the Holy One is doing with Moshe. This is what he's doing. He's burning the boats. He's saying, I have to take you a long way. I'm going to have to annihilate the things so that people aren't tempted to go back. They still will be, but there's nothing for them to go back to, right? So we'll keep going. They camped by the sea. Um, and we hear we hear the Holy One say that I'm going to strengthen Pharaoh's heart. So I want you guys to remember what that means. It doesn't mean that God made him more stubborn. It just said that God gave him over to his own will and said he allowed him, strengthened his own will. He didn't make him have a hardened heart. He didn't do that. But the Pharaoh himself already was changing his mind. Isn't it interesting that we hear that the people remember all the people were saying, what are you doing? Let him go, let him go. And then we're going to see in this verse, he says, what are you doing? Why did we let him go? It's like nobody can make up their minds. So have you ever tried to change? Like, I want to talk about the strengthening of the heart again. Have you ever tried to change something and be a new person? And you're like, I'm going to have this new habit. I want to work on this specific character. Okay. Or it could be as simple as a diet. And I want to walk in the fruits of his spirit. And then something happens and your heart, your will gets strengthened. Your old flesh, like your old stuff gets strengthened. And when that happens, you want to go right back to the old ways, like in a minute. You're trying really hard. You're going to be a new person. But the minute something kind of gets a little hard, you quickly want to go back. That's your will. Your will wants to turn back. And that's what's happening with Pharaoh. That's the same thing. It's the same thing. We want to look at everyone and judge. We need to ask God, please forgive us right now, Father, judging the way Pharaoh handled this, the way the children of Israel handled this. Please forgive us for judging that, because we do this every day. So that happens a few times before you finally then cross over and you actually stop responding that way and you actually become a new person, right? You actually start taking on that new characteristic. So I believe today that as we're talking about this will change, that it's kind of like that first korbanot, that first approach, the first sacrifice, the burning up, the korban olah. Remember, it's burning it all up, burning your whole will up. So he's having to show that your whole will has to be burned up. And if it's not, you can't approach him the same way. It's how do we walk close to him without burning up our will? We can't be close to him the same way. That he will let us be that stubborn, willful child. He will let you do that. Yeshua told us to pray that his will be done, right? Not that our will be done. So even though he'll let me be the stubborn child, even though he let Pharaoh's heart be hardened, I don't want to be that person, because we see how that works out. I want to walk in his will. So we remember again that this house of Pharaoh wanted all of them to leave. And now they're saying, why'd you let them go? And they grab up 600 chariots, the choice chariots, these fast chariots. And the children of Israel went out. It says they went out with a high hand, rum yad. And I saw that it was translated as defiantly. What does mine say? They went out with, what does your version say? Type it in the comments. What does your version say? I think mine says defiantly. I'm in the scriptures. They went out with defiantly. But I looked up the word high hand, arum yad. And it was interesting because if you really look at it from a Hebrew perspective, it says they went out lifted up with hearts and hands lifted up by the Holy One. Okay, so it wasn't really, they weren't leaving. They were leaving on this is my understanding today. So please correct me. Please someone say, nope, that's not what that means. But as I was digging into this, rum yad, it said lifted up with hearts and hands lifted up, and it's as if they were lifted up by the Spirit, by the Holy One. So it can be a gesture of praise, right? So if that's how they went out with their spirits high, lifted up. They weren't defiant, were they? I don't know. It doesn't seem that way when I'm reading the word. That's how I've always understood it, that they went out all defiant and, yeah, we're leaving, you're blowing this joint. Like that's not what I was reading. When I was actually this morning, I was rereading that word, and it's rum yad was with their hands lifted up, not like we're gonna get you. It was more that they left out in praise. This may change tomorrow. I don't know, but that's what I understood today. But then it says, then they lifted their eyes and they saw the Egyptians coming after them. Nasa ayin. They lifted up their eyes, Nasa Ayin. They had this cloud of the Holy One that was guiding them. And they were leaving on this note that the Holy One is on their front and on their rear, right? They have protection. And then they changed their perspective. Nasa Ayin. They lifted up their eyes and they saw the Egyptians were coming after them. They lifted up their eyes. Nasa Ayin. Their focus changed and they were afraid. Their perspective changed and they were afraid. Because we know our perspective is our reality, right? What have I, Nasa Ayin, where I know that he is for me. I know that he never leaves me, never forsakes me, that nothing can separate me from his love. Nothing, nothing, nothing can separate me from him. I can choose to walk away, but nothing's going to separate me from him. But when I'm so full and I'm so excited and I've seen this amazing miracles of things that he's done, and then all of a sudden, Nasa Ayin, all of a sudden I get a bad report from the doctors. All of a sudden I find out someone is sick that I know. All of a sudden I lose my job. All of a sudden I lift my eyes and I see something other than his face. I change my perspective, Nasa Ayin. My focus changes, and then I'm afraid. And as soon as they become afraid, let the griping begin, right? Let the griping begin. Wasn't there enough burial sites where we were? Could we have just died there? It was so much better back where we were. See, the Holy One already knows that they're going to constantly be tempted to be going back to the pain that they knew. He knows that I'm tempted to go back to what's comfortable, even when it was so painful that I cried out, please get me out of this. He knows that I'm going to always want to run back like a dog to its vomit, right? I'm going to want to run back to the thing that was painful, even though I'm free. I'm going to want to run back. One of the things I hear all the time is someone crying out that they don't want to be single, and they're praying for a wife or a husband, and they're praying and they're praying and they're praying. Then the Holy One gives them what they're asking for, and they're so happy and it's all amazing. And then Nasa Ayin, their perspective changes. Then all of a sudden they see the bad stuff because the honeymoon is over, and now they start griping and complaining about this woman or this man that he gave them. Like, I want out of this. I can't believe this. He's blah blah blah. She's blah blah blah. We are just as bad. Okay, let's do another one. How about the job? Oh, I just need a job. I want this job. I'm praying and praying and fasting and praying and praying, and God gives you the job. You have the job. You're so excited and it's so amazing, and everyone is so amazing, and you love this new job and everything's amazing. And then the honeymoon's over for the job, and Nasa Ayin, you look up and you see what this is really like. You see behind the curtains what this is really like. What you see all of a sudden, then you're afraid that this is not going to work for you. You're afraid that you made the wrong decision. You're afraid. All of a sudden, we walk in this fear because Nasa Ayin, we've changed our perspective and we started looking in the wrong places instead of, remember the old song, turn your eyes upon Jesus, look full in his wonderful face, and the things of earth will grow faintly dim in the light of his glory and grace. Isn't that it? When we turn our eyes on Yeshua, when we turn our eyes on the Holy One, and we say, we keep our perspective on him, the fire that's before us, the protection behind us, he's our front, he's our back, he's got us. If we keep our eyes on that instead of trying to look around, I mean, you have to look around to be able to see what's coming, and Nasa Ayin, then we start getting afraid. Didn't we tell you? They started to tell Moshe, didn't we tell you to leave us alone in Egypt? We would have rather died there. I mean, seriously, there's some bipolar stuff going on here. We're happy. Ah! We're happy. Ah! Like, that's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing this like crazy, like back and forth. And I see that in my own life. Maybe not this fast, but I do see it in things that are going on. Oh my gosh, I want this to happen. Oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening. Right? So he says, don't be afraid. Yareh al. Stop trembling in fear. Stand still and see. Okay, that may seem like a little bit of a word, stand still. Just stand still and see. Again, we're back to stand still and look at the right thing. Look what I'm going to do, not what's coming after you. Stand still is a huge request. He's saying, don't run, don't try to fight. Stand here. In Ephesians, it tells us to put on all the armor. And when we've done all we can do, what does it say to do? 1, 2, 3. Type it in. 1, 2, 3. What does it say to do? I want to see comments coming in. What does it say? What does it say? When you've done all you can do, what are we supposed to do? Stand. Charlie, I'm afraid. Charlie, I'm afraid. I don't know what's going to happen. I've done all I can do, but I feel like I still need to do more. And I feel like I need to do this and this and this and this. He's saying, stand. Someone needs to hear that today. Stand. He's telling you to change your perspective. Look on him. Stop being afraid and stand and watch and see. In Galatians 5, he says, stand firm and don't be yoked with slavery. Stand. Stand. You have to put your eyes on them, and then you're never going to see them again. Wait. Let's wait. You have put your eyes on them, he's saying. You're going to put your eyes on them. Go ahead, look at them. But you're never going to see them again. You've looked at them, but you're never going to see them again. The thing that you looked at, the thing that you're afraid of, you're never going to see them again. The thing you looked at, the thing you're afraid of is temporary. You're never going to see it again. In verse 17, he says, I am to be esteemed through them. Because of this, it's a Romans 8:28 moment. I'm going to work all of this for your good, but mostly I'm going to work it so they know that I am God. So you know that I am esteemed through them. In Psalms 27, he says, some may trust in horses. Some may trust in chariots. Does this sound familiar? He says, but we will trust in the name of our God. Let's go back to Leviticus 1, and the next korban is korban mincha. You guys know I'm a big nerd for Leviticus 1 and 2. It's my fave. It's my jam. Love, love, love it. I'm going to bring it in anytime I can. I want you to get it. This approach, this sacrifice is not about throwing down some bread on an altar. It's this bread offering is actually, at that time, bread, the grain offering, it was provision. Grain was that was your money. That's how you traded in grain. Oh, I need an omer of grain, or okay, we weigh this out on the scales and I'm going to trade this with it. That was provision. We have to be willing to lay down our ability to protect, to provide, and to fight for ourselves. We have to be willing to stand. To be able to come in and approach the king, that korban mincha means I'm willing to give up my ability. It was a voluntary offering. I am willing and volunteering to say, not my will be done, korban olah, and give us this day our daily bread. I can't do this without you. I am not in charge of my bread. I'm not in charge of bringing home the bread, right? I'm not in charge of that. I'm not in charge of protecting myself. I'm not in charge of being the provider. You are. So to approach the king, we want a savior, right? We're always crying out for the savior, but are we willing to let him be Lord? Are we willing really let him to be Lord, or do we want to go back? Like, to go back, they would be bowing a knee to the sovereign of Egypt. At this point, right? If they turn around and go back, you know what they're going to have to do, or they're killed. They're going to have to bow their knee to the sovereign or the king of Egypt, the Pharaoh, and not the sovereign of the universe. So it was more than saying, I'm scared and I want to go back. It was saying that I believe and I trust that he is more powerful, and that's the God I want to serve. This is all about the Holy One trying to remind them and to show them who and whose they are. And we're going to see this through the rest of the story. We have to trust the story that right now he is creating in them who they are and reminding them, and he's not offended or surprised by who they are. He knows that they've been 400 years in slavery, so they have a slave mentality. He knows you and knows exactly who you are. And all of this process is the reason that he's not letting you go straight to your destination, because he knows you need to take the longer steps so that you will know who he is and you will know who you are, that your calling and your election will be made sure. This is about that choice, because they didn't know him still. Do you? Do you know him? Do you know him as your Lord? Or do you just study about him and everything, but when things get rough, are you able to run into him and know that the righteous run to him and they are saved because he's your Lord and your Savior? Sometimes that part's easy. The harder part is knowing who you are. Knowing who you are. That none of this can affect your soul, that spark of the Holy One inside of you. It might hurt your flesh, but it sure can't get to there, because you are part of him, his breath, his neshama in you. And if we really, really knew that, we wouldn't have to trust in horses or chariots or anything. We would be able to stand in that peace. I can sit and make a list of all the miracles that I have witnessed in my life. But the minute things get tight, I start to trust in my own understandings. Do you understand? Anyone else? Trust in the Lord with all your heart, your will, and lean not in your own understandings. Oh, my thoughts, my reasonings. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your path. Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, which means will. I'm going to give up my will. Korban olah. I'm going to trust you with all my will. I'm going to give it all up. And I'm going to lean not on my own understandings. I understand that the enemy has come in like a flood, but I'm not going to lean on that. And I'm not going to have vain imaginations and try to figure it all out myself. I'm going to get close to you, and I'm going to ask you for direction and guidance, because I know that your word says you will promise to direct my path. So, Father, I am coming before you right now, and I'm laying down my will. I'm laying down my understandings. Oh my goodness, the Pharaoh's coming in. The old things that I tried to get away from, addictions, people, understandings. Maybe it's some of your religious understandings that are chasing you down. Some of it's all coming after you sometimes, and you're turning around and you're seeing it, and it would just be easier to go back. Or would it? It seems that way because I'm leaning on my understandings. But Father, I'm going to give up my will, and I'm going to look ahead. I'm not going to look behind. And then what happened next? The column moved. It said the column moved. Sometimes he's before us and sometimes he's behind us. He leads and he protects. We can't see it because we have assumed control over our lives. We don't see where he's moved a lot of times. We don't see that he's our rear guard. We don't see that he's before us leading us, or both. We don't see that he's the cloud in the day and the night. He's bringing light in the dark places so that our feet don't stumble. Instead, we're so focused, our eyes are always looking for what we should be afraid of. Because we think we're in control. So we're looking all the time for what's coming, because I got to be ready to control. I got to be ready to get ready for it. We have traded that close with the Holy One, with the creator of the universe, the sovereign, our King of kings and Lord of lords. We have traded that closeness in for counterfeit control, counterfeit provision, counterfeit ability to take care of ourselves. Isn't that what happened in the garden? They gave up that closeness with the creator for a counterfeit. They walked with him. He cared for them. He did everything for them. And even when they stumbled, he still provided a covering for them. He still provided the ability for them to approach him covered. Not just in some little pitiful leaves out of their control, because they're going to control it and they're going to try to sew together their own thing and mend what was broken. Remember this. Remember that I said that. Sew together what was fragmented. but they still hid because there was so much shame. But so that to get past that shame, he clothed them. He mended something together for them to bring healing so that they could approach him. So we've traded this closeness in, and the waters, I love it when we see the picture of it. Sometimes when you're reading this, would you just stand in the water? Would you stand on the dry land? Would you close your eyes right now and just imagine the fire before you, the wall, this wall behind you? You see the crowds of people are going, the walls are up on both sides of you, this huge water being held back by the east wind, right? It's holding it back. The breath of God is holding back these walls of water as you're able to walk through on dry land. You know what's coming back after you. Can you stand there for a minute? Do you hear the goats? Do you hear the children? Are people screaming? Are they crying? What are you doing? What are you doing in the middle when the enemy comes in like that flood and he says, I will lift up a standard. I will lift those. I will push back the waters. What does it look like and what does it feel like? I want to challenge you as you're reading through many of these stories. Would you sit in it? Would you hear what's happening, what's being said and what's not being said? Will you listen for it? These waters they protected them. The very thing that they feared as they were coming up against it, was coming around it, that very thing that they feared was being used then to destroy their enemy. What has he used in your life that you feared? I mean, you were afraid, but he used it then, turned it, and destroyed your enemy with it. So I have a story, and I might have shared this with you guys before. It's worth repeating. When I went through a divorce, and my daughter's father took me to court to get custody. He wanted full custody of her. It was just difficult, paying child support. There was a lot of, who goes through a nice divorce. It was just not nice. He's not a bad person. It just at that time it didn't bring out the best in people, right? Um, so we ended up having to go to mediation, and I was terrified. I mean, I had gone already, all my vain imaginations. What if this happens? What if this happens? What if this happens? And then I prayed as I went in, and I shared before when I went to court after. I'll share that. But when I went into the mediation, I sat there with the mediator, and she began asking us questions, and I'm crying through most of it. I'm terrified. What's going to happen if I lose my daughter? And I had believed the lie of who people had said I was. So somehow I believed that somehow someone was going to think I was a bad mother or something, and they were going to take my daughter away. I hadn't done anything that would warrant that, but I believed the lie. I believed what he was saying to me. So the mediator kept asking questions. If you were the non-custodial parent, what would you want? And if I'm the non-custodial parent, I was sitting in that line, I would want everything. At the time, I was wanting to move to Oregon, and I said I would be on a bus every weekend to be with her. So I would want her every single weekend. I wouldn't want her to be ripped between two houses. So I would come to her and be with her, whatever it takes. And her father's response to that was, well, I don't have the money to do that. I can't just do that. Well, neither did I, but I'm willing to hitchhike. That's what I said. I'm willing to hitchhike. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to be with my little girl. I'll do whatever it takes. And the very thing that I feared, by the time we got into court, the judge, I've shared this before, stopped and prayed. We made an agreement we wouldn't have attorneys. He showed up with an attorney. It was a friend of his, but she was still an attorney, and to guide and advise him. I was there with my sister, and I was so afraid. But what the Holy One ended up doing, the very thing that I was afraid of, he ended up revealing the heart of her father. He was angry with me. He was retaliating against me. And so his heart was hardened. And so what it ended up doing is the judge ended up saying it was been obvious that the concern during mediation of the father is that he's more concerned about the finances of things and that he doesn't want to pay the child support more than he is wanting the child. So I give full custody to the mother. He gave me not only full custody, gave me the right to move anywhere I wanted with her, and increased my child support. See, the very thing that I was afraid of, he used to destroy the enemy. And I'm not saying her father was the enemy, but it was the enemy of my daughter. It was the enemy coming against us. I felt like it was coming in like a flood, and he did raise up a standard. See, in this story, the next thing we see is that they're coming in, and he says the Holy One then looks down, and he brought confusion on them. Don't we hear that story again in Second Chronicles when you have the armies coming in from all directions? And what does he do? He assumed the battle position. What was the battle position in Second Chronicles? I want to hear somebody type it in. What is the battle position? What did they do? Did they all jump up and start sharpening their arrows? Did they all get situated so they can come in and attack? Did they draw out battle plans? What was happening in Second Chronicles? None of that. It says they hit their knees. They began to worship. They began to worship. And the worship confused the enemy, and they started to attack each other. Well, we see the Holy One's looking down through the cloud, and he sees them, and he causes the wheels to fall off. Can you imagine? I mean, let's sit in it. The wheels are falling off these chariots, and they're trying to drag the chariots around. It says they were hard to pull. Well, of course they were hard. These poor horses. They're trying to pull these chariots around. He confused them. You see, when the enemy comes in like a flood, he will raise up a standard against them. That's Isaiah 59:9. And raise up a standard, noose in Hebrew. It says he will cause it to flee. And I love that, because it wasn't just like raising up a standard, meaning I'm going to raise up meaning the sight of him. Look, he looked down and it caused confusion. The sight of him, the sight of his standard, the sight of his sovereignty is going to cause the enemy to flee. The enemy of your soul. Sometimes you're the enemy. Sometimes it's that evil inclination. Sometimes it's your own mind, this battle in your mind going on. He will raise up, if you begin to worship, it is raising up a standard. It is raising up that flag saying, I am not going to bow my knee to anything but the sovereign King of the universe. And as you begin to worship and you begin to praise, it will cause your enemy to be confused and to flee. That's the battlefield of the mind. When we lift up gratitude and praise, he promises us with prayer and thanksgiving, we present our request to God. And then what happens, everyone? What happens? He says the peace, the shalom of God that passes all understanding. When we are grateful, when we worship, when we're thanking him in the middle of our chaos, in the middle of our fear, we stop bowing our knee and looking back and changing our perspective, but we turn our eyes and look on the right things, who he is, who he said we are. We start to worship. Then what he ends up doing, he says, then he will guard our heart and our minds. He will guard our will. He will cause our minds and our will, and he will cause us to align with what his plan is. And how many of you need today your heart and your mind? God help us all with our minds, but our will to be guarded, our mind to be guarded. How many of you need that today? How many of you are just confused? You're looking for one thing. You feel like everything's coming against you. You're not sure what to do. How many of you need your mind to be guarded? He told us the secret sauce. He says, prayer with thanksgiving. We're seeing it here. We're seeing the enemy coming in when he's looking down through the cloud and you're crying. Let's be thankful. We see it in Second Chronicles. They begin to worship. Well, they get through and let the makeover begin. They get through. They are a bunch of ragtag slaves, right? And we can talk about, which we probably will get into on Friday when I get to teach with Brenda in the portion with her. But we talk about the water, the passing through the water, this giant mikvah, right, that happens. This water, we know water can be a salvation. It can be a thing that moves you. The mem can be that life-giving thing that moves you to the next thing. That's what the word mem, that's what water, ma'im, it's moving you to the next thing. Or the contronym of it can be chaos. And we saw the contronym happen with the Pharaoh and his chariots and his people and his horses and everything. It was it annihilated them. And then they move on. And we're going to find that we don't have any water. There, we're going to see the beautiful songs. They sing all the songs. And then they move on and there's no water. And then they find water at Mara. It's bitter. And Moshe grabs a tree, and he finds a tree. and it fixes it. The tree, the tree, the tree, the tree. Wow. I think that I encourage you to spend some time just in that study. That tree making that water that was bitter. There's so much richness there. The tree of life, that tree is bringing life to the bitter waters. Beautiful, beautiful picture of Yeshua. We see the salvation, our Messiah. We see him right here. We see making the waters pure. And then in 1526, he says, the Holy One says, if you shamar and asa and shema, if you listen, obey, and you do, it's not just like you hear, right? We're not faith without works. We're not hearers only of the word. That's what I'm concerned about, honestly, in this messianic movement, in this Hebraic understanding movement. My concern is that we've gotten so caught up in knowledge, learning new things, understanding all the Hebrew things, that we might be listening and we might be hearing, but we're not doing. We're not hearing the Holy One. We're not walking it out the way Messiah told us to. We're not being who he's called us to be. We're not. That's the thing. It's an active listening that leads us to doing. They didn't just get to sit around at Yeshua's feet. They had to eventually get up and go out. My concern is that we're so learning and hearers that we're not doing, that we've become fat in all of our knowledge, and we're so excited about this new knowledge, and at first it's so exciting, and then I'm hearing the bickering between what we're going to call, are they denominations now? I feel like these sects, every people are breaking up into this movement. Well, I believe this and this calendar and this, how you say his name, and this. Who cares? It doesn't matter. Are you doing what he's called you to do? Are you listening? Are you hearing? Are you doing? Are you obeying? Are you close to him? He says, what if you do that? Then I will heal you. Don't we remember the scripture verse? If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray, I will then hear from heaven and I will heal their land. We have to humble ourselves. Can I plead with you? It's time for us to get back to humbling and getting close to him. He's calling out for his people to get close. Get close, get close, get close. If I come to speak at your congregation or at your women's group or wherever you ask me to come in, I promise you something you're going to hear from me this year is about getting close to him. He wants you close so he can tell you things, so that your perspective stays, so that you have a life that's rich and amazing, because he wants to heal you. Is it interesting? He says, I am the God that healeth you. Why does he identify himself here as Jehovah Rapha? Instead of, I am the God who saves you. I am the mighty one. He could have picked all the other things, but he right here says, if you'll do these things, right after this water, if you'll do these things, I'm going to heal you. Rapha. You guys, I spent some time in this word and it broke me. Sorry, I keep hitting this little Mikey thing. It broke me. Rapha, when you look up the word in Hebrew, the word picture I want you to get is it's to sew or to mend something together to bring healing. We go back to the garden, and he covered them. He sewed and he mended. He was Jehovah Rapha in the garden. He was healing the wound that they had caused. He sewed and he mended something together. He's the one that takes the fragmented, torn pieces of our lives, of our hearts, our will, our minds. He takes those fragmented pieces of our world, of our countries, of our congregations, of our family, those torn pieces, and he brings them back together and he sews and knits them back together. Are you feeling fragmented today? Do you feel like there's pieces? He's telling you today, I am Jehovah Rapha. if you will shamar, asa, if you will hear and listen, obey, if you will get close so you can understand and do what I say. I'm not just that you hear it, but you hear it and act on it. You hear it and you bring change to your life. And not, well, I just live on this planet, I'm not perfect. But you're trying to be holy and in his presence. He's saying, I'm Jehovah Rapha for you. He comes to mend the brokenhearted. Remember that? And to bind up their wounds. And he's called us to be the Raphas in the healers, in our environments, in our spheres of influence. He's called us to be the healers. We're supposed to do what we see him doing. The way Yeshua said, I only do what I see my Father doing. He was Shamar, Asa, and Shemaim, his father. I only see and I do and I say, I'm doing whatever he says. That's what he was modeling for us. He's Jehovah Rapha, which means we get to be little Raphas. We get to be little healers wherever we go. Are you bringing fragmented pieces to the brokenhearted, to the people that maybe aren't so nice? And the reason they're not so nice is because they're fragmented and ripped and torn apart into pieces. Are you being the one that helps bring pieces together and aligning it and working with him and helping to sew things back together? How does he do it? How does he do it? I looked at the word Rapha. The word is Resh, Pei, Aleph. I'd like you guys to write that down, and I'd like you to look up those 3 letters, and I want you to see your own hieroglyphic on that. Resh, Pei, Aleph. For those of you in the Ruta Cafe, I want you to jump in, and I want you to go to Discovering the Energy of the Letters and look at those 3 letters and have Brenda wash over you what those 3 letters mean. That word Rapha. I'm going to give you a super quick overview. This just what it would look like in a hieroglyphic. This word Rapha is a ruler coming in humility, bowing its head, coming off of its throne. We see Messiah here, speaking a word in the power of the Almighty. Do you hear the scripture? And the word became flesh and dwelt among us. He came as Jehovah, Messiah, Rapha. He came off of his throne. He came down in humility to speak the words in the power of his Father, in the authority of his Father. He came to do those things through his word. That's the reason when he's in the wilderness and he's struggling, he says, it is written. He's not trying to battle. He could have stood up and he could have caused an army to raise up and annihilate Satan. He could have done all that as he's being tempted in the wilderness. But the way that he fought it was, it is written. It is written. It is written. He came with healing in his wings. His word heals you. If we listen to it, if we act on it, if we walk it out, he promises that isn't just for them. This promise, he says, I will be your healer. I will knit together all those things that are fragmented and torn apart, that you are having a trouble you're trying to put your own little fig leaves on you, whatever, leaves of trees and plants. You're trying to put together the old things. You're looking back to things that used to work for you, and you're trying to go back to that, and you're trying to do this. You're trying all these things, whether it's it might even be a concoction you're trying to drink to bring healing, and he didn't tell you to do it. You're just doing it out of your own understanding. I'm not saying that you shouldn't try natural healing sources, but make sure that you've aligned with his plan. What is he asking you to do? If you're close to him, you'll hear him. He'll tell you, and then you can do it, and it will knit together those fragmented pieces. He promised it right here. This is generational. This is for me. This is for you. This is for your children and your grandchildren. He will heal you. And you get to heal others. That's how we disciple. We go out and we bring fragmented things, but we're so wanting to go out and stand our ground and make our point and make sure we're heard. Are you making sure he's heard? I love Hava Harris. If you go back and listen, and Ed was saying one of the things she said, and we've made that our goal this year in our home. I want his name to be famous in our home, in our mouths, in our lives. I want to bring healing and sew things back together. I want the name Jehovah Rapha to be named famous in our home. That we're a home that brings pieces that are fragmented together and sews them up, instead of it being about our way and how we want to do things. Instead of going back to the old way, how's that working for you? Not great. That's not the way it always happens, right? And we're going to see as you continue on in the story, they start murmuring. I got a little confused here, and I love input, so I'm ready for it. Some input, we see the word murmured, and then they murmured. Loon. I looked up the word, and the word means like it says tarry all night, to pass the night, to lodge. And later down, if you keep looking, it says to murmur. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that, but I feel like there's something there of what was really happening. What was happening? And I was thinking not to let the sun go down on your anger, the way it roots itself in the night. If you allow things to lodge in you, I don't know. I'm not going to try to midrash here on this. But anyways, the bottom line is that later here, they're murmuring again. Their perception is changing again. If only. When we sat by our pots of meat and we ate bread to satisfaction, if only is like when we talk about the good old days. If only I knew what I knew then, now, and was able to go back and be that person knowing what I know now. If only. We hear Yeshua in Deuteronomy 8:3. He's quoting Deuteronomy 8:3. Yeshua is saying man doesn't live by bread alone, right? One of the things that happens here is they're complaining about food. Can I just tell you, currently, like, I'm on an eating program, and I'm having to learn that even though I've lost 20 pounds, I'm learning that food is not my refuge, because it was before. And I catch myself saying, well, if only I could just eat this and make this work for me. But I'm realizing what I'm doing is if I go back and eat the way I used to eat, I'm still going to be bringing the same death to my body that I was bringing before, that I have to know a new way, so that I represent the glory of the Father and the Creator, so that my tabernacle represents who He's called me. This is the temple of His Spirit, and that my nephesh is going to better represent my neshama that's inside of me. How am I going to walk this out? The things I say, the way that I present myself. Am I coming across as a glutton, that I bow my knee to things that are food that are not bringing life to me, and they're not aligning with the calling that He has on my life? Food is not my strength. But if you'll shamar and asa and shema, I promise that He will sew you back together. I know this can hit a nerve in some people that, oh my gosh, she's talking about food. Why is it? I'm not going to keep, well, you guys have to tune in on Friday. Brenda and I, we can hit the rest of this parsha. Why is it that one of the gods that we bow our knee to is food? We want to do it our way. We want to eat the way we used to always eat and still look the way we did. We want to do all those things, but it didn't bring life to us. It finally catches up to us. I'm going to ask you to pray today. And Father, I just ask that right now that you would bring revelation to anything that we're trying to look back to. Wherever our perception has changed, Father, that you would turn our eyes back on you, that our eyes would stay on you, that our perception would stay on your ways, that we would remember that when we're in the middle of the chaos, that we're going to go through you, the living water, and Father, that we're going to let that wash over us, and that your word is going to be what is presented to ourselves and to others as we help partner with you in bringing Rapha to the world again. See you guys next week.
זה שיר פשוט, זה שיר קצר, אולי נשמע טיפה מוזר, אבל תדע, כי זו עובדה, שאלוהים אוהב אותך, והוא רואה, והוא שומע, ואכפת לו מכל דבר קטן. תדע לך, שזו עובדה, שאלוהים אוהב אותך. זה
זה שיר פשוט.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet.